Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talk, where we talk about life, love, and business. And today we're going to work on tweaking our perspective about the future. So grab your coffee, um, turn me up while you're driving in your headphones, or just roll over on your side and check out the show. We'll be back in a few. Let's give y'all time to get in the room. And don't forget to like and share. Be right back.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserved to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family, and welcome to the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks. And for those of you who don't know, Assalamu alaikum simply just means peace. The the greatest thing that you could wish upon anyone or bestow upon anyone or help anyone to get is peace. And so that's why we greet one another in our community with the greeting words of peace. It's actually a prayer. So welcome to Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks. I'm not drinking coffee this morning. I needed to hydrate. Um, so this is what happened. I took a bunch of my herbs yesterday to help with allergies, and I'm feeling a little woo woo this morning. So if I bust out a few sneezes, that don't worry about it. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the show last night where we talked about just expanding our view of the continent of Africa. And we talked about just the economy, um, a little bit about some of our plans as a group to go over, to head over. But so, yeah, we're going to just start expanding our palette as far as that's concerned. And we'll look at economies around the world just to begin to start thinking globally from an economic standpoint as conscious entrepreneurs. Okay. So, anyway, y'all know that on this channel, I love giving free game and helping people to navigate the world of business. One of the things that just always bothered me in business is that most of us always want to be further ahead than what we really are. Some of us just want somebody to hand that to us on a silver platter. But then there's others of us who really want to earn it, who's like, no, I want to be there. I'm talented. I can contribute. And no one gives away free game. You go to these conferences and people are just talking about themselves. They're selling you a $299, $399, $1,599 package. And nobody's telling you what kind of free game. Sorry about that. Nobody's telling you what kind of free game. No, nobody's telling you what the game is. How about that? Then, then you meet some people and they just want you to work for them. And a lot of times we don't know how to handle it when somebody says, I want you to be my partner. I want to partner with you. That kind of conversation rarely happens. And so what I started realizing just navigating through this is that, man, people need help on how to see things. They need help on how to navigate around these predators. They need help on how to navigate around people who are trying to hustle them, whether it's to be an employee or to take their money, or a lot of times people will just hustle you. This is the new game now, so that they can be associated with you, maybe get in a picture with you, post it on their page and make it look like, they got it going on. So I do coaching, counseling. A lot of you all book me for money psychology, emotional intelligence. Man, I got so much rolling through my brain right now. A lot of downloads coming in. But I'm going to stick to the subject. I'm going to try my best. Yeah. So I want to talk about the future, because in doing coaching sessions and in talking to people, not only are they saying that they're not optimistic about the future, but I can tell in people's actions that people don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. They're not comfortable. Some of it is because those of us who are, I won't say spiritual people, because on the spiritual side, if you're a spiritual person, you really gain this spark of life that makes you optimistic about everything. That's kind of how I navigate the world as a spiritual person. And as far as a practice and a basic belief system or the foundational belief system, it's Islam for me. And but what I've found is that people who are religious tend to be a little bit more pessimistic. There's a lot of gloom and doom in their energy space. Forgive me because I'm talking to you all, and it's like I literally have this scroll of information flowing down one side of my brain, and I'm trying to segregate it. So people who are religious tend to have a gloom and doom. We understand, we feel like revelations, and we understand the end of the world, the fall of America, just the end of the world. You hear it all the time. I hear it all the time from religious people. And while that may or may not be true, living life as if the world is going to end tomorrow is not the way of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we don't think like that. We prepare for disasters, for famine, for the vicissitudes of the world. But we are taught that the bottom rail is going to be raised to the top, that there will be a changing. People get nervous when you start saying a new world order. And I mean, no situation stays the same all the time. Okay. No empire has always stayed on top. Nobody that wins has always won unless they quit before they lose. So it's natural that the economy is going to correct itself. That is happening. We live in an economic time where there were certain dependencies that the systems that we depend upon were built on. And a lot of those dependencies are going away. Sometimes people see change as the end of the world. No more DEI, no more affirmative action, no more this or that. And we start going, oh, the world is coming to an end. A lot of people got really depressed when they saw that insurrection take place at the Capitol. And a lot of people are depressed depending on what political candidate they support. So some believe, well, I'm not even going to say no names. Some believe one person is going to win. Some believe another person is going to win. They're not really conscious of God's real interaction in all of our lives. And we don't know history enough to be able to place ourselves in the mental space of those that lived through change in the past. Not only do we not know history enough, we don't respect history enough. So this society that we live in, it's about everything that's new, everything that's right now, everything that's young, and nothing else really matters. And the unfortunate part of that is that the historical side we miss. And we know how important history is at rewarding the researcher, according to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we don't think about, we don't even think about what was the mindset of people who watched the internet get ushered in. We don't even think about what was happening and what were people saying in the world when we went from walking, riding horses and buggies to automated vehicles. What were people thinking? Like, folks are tripping now because they're like, oh my God, there's not going to be any more gas cars. Everybody's going to be driving electric. People are like, the world is ending. And there tends to be that gloom and doom when you don't have an understanding of history. You don't understand that not only has the earth gone through major transformations, but the universe has gone through major transformations. What was it like? And so many of us are so pessimistic. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was saying, I have no hope in our youth. I have no hope in our future. And I was like, what? I just feel like, how can you live like that as a person of faith? You don't have no hope? You don't feel nothing positive? He's like, nope, we're doomed. He was talking about America's falling. We're all going to have to either live in poverty or move away overseas. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's say this world economy is falling, which we know that it is, and it's coming in the form of rapid transformation. Why don't you study what the mindsets were and try to teleport yourself into the mindset of people who founded America, people who were the first in California during the gold rush, people who lived through the Great Depression. This is just modern changes and economic adjustments. And of course, now with our access to information, there's so much internet, there's so much television, information is just coming. Bloom, 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 bloom. So, of course, many, many years ago, we didn't have that, right? You literally had to get a newspaper, read about it. But now we just have one bad thing we're learning after another. So many of us don't even realize that we're so pessimistic about the future that it's impacting our ability to run our businesses, to plan for our businesses, to set the right budget, to be strategic, and to even be happy and excited about the day and time in which we're living. Now, I could get really, really spiritual and start talking about the evolution. It's not even, well, yeah, spiritual, metaphysical, I don't know. The evolution of the human as a species and what we can do today that we couldn't do a certain amount of years ago. But I won't even go there. I want to stay on a very practical level because what I want is for us to leave this conversation with a mindset to be more futuristic and more hopeful about the future. And so when I started seeing all this gloom and doom and people just feeding on negativity, and here's another thing, they have us so addicted to low vibrations because what they do, even when it comes, I talk about this oftentimes, even now with music, when you have certain tones introduced into music. They did this when they took us from the 70s music into another form of music where we were at 432 megahertz. They started introducing certain tones that were activating our lower chakras. And in activating our lower chakras, those tones, that music, those movies, that news activates us and makes us have certain energies, sexual energies and hunger energies in those lower chakras. And we convert what should be that creative energy into either a hunger for food or sex. So we're constantly bombarded with a vibration that makes us think that we're either always hungry or in need of some type of sexual stimulation. And so what some people do is they just listen to this stuff over and over again. We watch these programs over and over again. We listen to certain music over and over and over again. And then we wonder why it's difficult for us to discipline ourselves. It's just difficult for us to even think about the future because now we've become hypnotized to associate stress with food or stress with sex or certain sounds increase those drives. And I'm trying to be very classy in the way I say this. Um, and I'm battling this information that's coming through. Um, so, what happens with us then is as we're navigating life, these two urges are so very powerful. And so we don't think past that short term need to satisfy those urges. So we don't think about the future. We're not really thinking about generational wealth. We say we are, but not really. Most of us can't wait for our children to grow up and get out of the house and get away from us. Or I hear people talking about that. We say, oh, they're going to college and oh, they're going to school. But a lot of us have business and we ain't thinking about bringing our children into it. We're not thinking about helping and just letting them roll with us so that they can kind of see how to navigate the world, because they're so attached or so detached from us and attached to their devices, their world, their children, not their children, their friends. But we're not really thinking about them the way we say that we are. We can't wait for them to graduate from high school or college so we can go stick them in some job somewhere. They can start making money and we can be happy that they can take care of themselves. We got to dissect that. What does that mean when it comes to our view of the future? There's a study, and I want to go through this study a little bit because it's by the Pew Research Center, PEW Research Center, and it's dated September 18th, 2023, and it's entitled "Americans Are More Pessimistic Than Optimistic About Many Aspects of the Country's Future." Americans are more pessimistic than optimistic. And y'all know, if they say in America, if they say white America catches a cold, black America catches the flu. So a lot of us are living for the moment. We're not planning for the future. A lot of us aren't even thinking about trying to be better. We're just like, it is what it is. But I want to read through this just to kind of help us put things into perspective, because it's very, very important that we understand that the decisions we make today, the micro decisions we make today, impact the future, impact our children, it impacts the country, it impacts the world, it'll impact the universe. When we talk about the world ending, what do we really mean by that? Let's talk about this. Here's the first part. Americans feel generally pessimistic about the future of the United States when it comes to several aspects of society. This is according to the Pew Research Center survey. 63% of Americans are pessimistic about the country's moral and ethical standards. Meaning most people, 63% of Americans believe we are circling the drain. Okay. Our moral and ethical standards, it's bad. It's bad. And then 59% are pessimistic about the educational system. So let's stop right there. If you're in that 63% of Americans that is pessimistic about the country's moral and ethical standards, what are you doing about it? Because all you and I can do is control ourselves. So yes, we can look on the news. We see all kind of fraud taking place. We see so much propaganda and from everywhere, every industry. But what are we doing about it? I tell my clients all the time, if you're part of that 63% of Americans who are pessimistic about the country's morals and ethical standards, how are you conducting yourself? Are you really striving to live on a higher moral ground with higher ethics? Because we can change it one person at a time. We can change our world. But it don't do us any good to look over there and go, man, we circling the drain. There's no more morals. There's no more ethics. But then we don't try to make sure that we're doing our part so that we're not contributing to the pessimism and to the degradation of our morals and standards. If you're part of the 59% that are pessimistic about our educational system, what are you all doing about it? I know parents who homeschool their children because they're pessimistic about it. I know people who send their children to certain private schools because they're pessimistic about it. I know in the Nation of Islam, we set up our own school system for our children because we're pessimistic about it. So the question is, what are you doing about it? If you say, you know what, I can't send my child to a private school, or I don't want to, or it's too hard, because it becomes very difficult to focus on these things when you got to go to work every day. Then are you involved in parent associations at your child's school? Are you involved with the classes that are being taken? Do you have a relationship with the principal, with the teachers? What are you doing about it within your own sphere of influence? How are you supplementing your child's education? I know for myself, I believe my parents were pessimistic about the educational system, but they spent a lot of time supplementing my education. You know, when I was in the first grade, my mother was buying fourth and fifth grade workbooks that I would do in my spare time. So I had all these workbooks that were like 3 or 4 grades ahead of where I was supposed to be from a age grade standpoint. They put me in a lot of special programs just to supplement that education. So what are you doing about it? Okay, I'm going to continue. I want to read something else. Let's see. 44% of Americans are pessimistic about our country's ability to ensure racial equality for all people, regardless of their race. We'll talk about that later because I think more Black people, excuse me, are pessimistic about that. Excuse me, than most other people. Let's see, what else can we talk about in here? I'm gonna skip the Republican Democratic part because I don't even want to get into that. Across racial and ethnic groups, white adults are the most pessimistic group when it comes to the US's moral standards. So 71% of white adults feel pessimistic about this, compared with 55% of Asians, excuse me, 50% of Blacks, and 50% of Hispanic adults. So 71% of white adults, 50% or 55% of Asians, 50% of Blacks, and 50% of Hispanics are pessimistic about the U.S. moral and ethical standards. That's the breakdown of that one. 64% of white adults feel pessimistic about the education. But that's interesting because 50% of Hispanics, 48% of Asians, and 45% of Black people are pessimistic about the country's educational system. I think it has to do with the fact that because of the ongoing racism and discrimination that many of us have faced, we have stopped placing a level of reliance on certain systems. And I don't even know that we even waste, and some of us don't even waste our time being pessimistic about it anymore. We're just trying to figure out what we can do about it within our circle of influence. And I think that's why some of those numbers are skewed. Some people may disagree, but I don't think it's that white people have more knowledge about the system. I really honestly think that it has to do with the history of racism and trauma that these other ethnic groups, including Black people, have experienced when it came to education and the moral and ethical standards of the country that make us less dependent upon it. It's kind of like we already kind of feel like we know what that's going to be. So we're over here trying to figure out what we're going to do about it. This is a good one. 45% of white adults feel pessimistic about the country's ability to get along with other countries. 36% of Hispanic adults and 34% of Black and Asian people feel pessimistic about America's ability to get along with other countries. Again, I don't think that's due to naivete. I think it is due to the fact that many of us are victims of our country not getting along with other countries. And so we're way more focused on what should we do about it? What are the solutions? Okay. And I think that in the short term, it changes our vibration and makes us a little bit more optimistic. So it's an interesting way, because when you see a problem and you start trying to find a solution and you come up with what you think might be a solution or a micro solution, your vibration changes. But if you see a system that you believe in and you've relied upon that has supported you your entire life and given you an advantage, and when you see that start to circle the drain by in whatever capacity you believe that that's circling the drain. What I mean by that, you may be a white person and you may be saying, when I see more Blacks and Hispanics and Asians becoming a part of a certain system, I believe it's circling the drain. You might feel like that. You may be a white adult who says, I've never had to think about another solution because this system has always worked for me. And all of a sudden now it's not working. You're going to be more pessimistic. Your vibration is going to be different from the Hispanics and Blacks and Asians in these studies who have already decided that the system may or may not work for us. So when you ask us about education, our perspective is different, because some of us have come up with alternative solutions or ways in which to supplement the failing system. And those that still have such a strong belief and reliance on certain systems that they become so pessimistic are generally those that will have a hard time preparing for the future. Just giving you some perspective. When you come up with a solution, when you do for self, when you're working towards changing the reality of your life, yourself, your family, your community, you have to be more optimistic and less pessimistic, because you need that vibrational energy in order to make your plan manifest. Then the study also says a different pattern emerges when it comes to the country's ability to ensure racial equality in the future. About half of Black people, 51%, and half of Asian people, 49%, say they feel pessimistic about the country's ability to ensure racial equality in the future. This is interesting. A little less, 44% of Hispanics and 43% of white adults are pessimistic about the country's ability to ensure racial equality. So, I mean, those statistics, those numbers aren't off. You got 51%, 49%, 44, 43. Needless to say, a lot of people are pessimistic about racial equality in the future. So the question becomes, what does that mean? Check out another statistic in here. This one I do have to give you, Republican Democrats. 56% of Republicans are pessimistic, compared with 25% of Democrats being pessimistic about the institute of marriage and the family in the country. This is interesting because this ties into what we were talking about yesterday when we were talking about how economies are judged by several indicators, and one of those indicators is its dependency factor, meaning that when one person goes out to go to work or open a business, if you have less people that depend on you or less mouths to feed, that means the dependency factor of that particular country is lower. And it is said, based on this economic model, that that country has a better economic outlook. One could argue a lot on that because we start talking about now the deterioration of the family. The more educated and the more liberal people become in exchange for being more economically savvy. So when you see here on this data by the Pew Institute that 56% of Republicans, which tend to be a little bit more conservative, and 25% of Democrats are pessimistic about the institution of marriage, I think it ties into what I was saying yesterday, that there are institutions and people that drive these economic factors, and that statistic, in my opinion, says a lot. Yeah, that's really interesting. So we talked about that yesterday. Let's see what else is in here that you all may find interesting. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But the main thing that they talked about, those are the main 5 topics. The institution of marriage. Okay. 56% of Republicans are pessimistic. 25% of Democrats are pessimistic. Moral and ethical standards in our country. If we go Democrat, Republic, 75% of Republicans are pessimistic about the moral and ethical standards of the country, and 54% of Democrats are pessimistic about it. As far as our country's ability to ensure racial equality, 54% of Republicans are pessimistic about it. And they say only 34% of Democrats are pessimistic about it. It's a little bit different when you break it down among race. You got it about 50-50. But if you go Republican, Democrat, which I think is interesting, the pessimism numbers are a bit skewed. Interesting. Let's see. 67% of Republicans are pessimistic about our country's educational system. 53% of Democrats are pessimistic about it. 48% of Republicans are pessimistic about our country's ability to get along with other countries. And only 35% of Democrats are pessimistic about it. This study says a lot. And I'm going to get a little bit into a political discussion here. I don't identify as a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent that actually looks at the issues, and I don't vote across party lines. I look at the issues and how certain issues are impacting myself, my family, and my community. So I'm a very selfish voter when it comes to that. And I study it. So I don't get on the personality bandwagon. If you start doing that, then now you're getting into groupthink and not really being creative. Local politics are really important to me because a lot of times that's where things really can be changed, where we can make a difference. But when you see that on average of all of these statistics we talked about, the Democrats, according to the Pew Institute, are less worried about certain key things than the Republicans. I think it probably speaks to why um, you don't really see the Democratic Party doing a lot of heavy politicking um, about most of these races, especially the presidential race, because I think if they're looking at these statistics, which a lot of people are very data driven, and I'm sitting on a lot of boards and worked at a lot of companies who look at studies like this, and they sit down and they base their strategies and their next moves and their marketing campaigns and their their issues on statistics like this probably explains if they're looking at these statistics, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's others out here like this. We'll have to look at it and cover it on the show. But if you got only 25% of Democrats who feel pessimistic about the institution of marriage, even though we know less people are getting married, but only 25%, but 56% of Democrats, only 54% of Democrats feel that we have a problem with moral and ethical standards in this country, but 75% of Republicans feel that way. You got 34% of Democrats who are pessimistic about racial equality, but 54% of Republicans. You got 67% of Republicans who are pessimistic about the educational system, and only 53% of Democrats. You got 35% of Democrats pessimistic about the country's ability to get along, and you got 48% of Republicans. What is that saying? Is it the data that's driving the party that people are choosing? Or is it the data that's driving how each of the parties is navigating around their candidates for presidency? There's a lot of people that just look at data. They sit up, they look at data, they study data. They don't have a pulse on the real world. And so they're just looking at data. This is why people like the governor in New York can say things like, Black children in Harlem don't even know the word computer. Who told you that? And what world are you living in that would even fall out and fumble out of your mouth? I get it. You talk a lot. You talk for a living. And I get it. But my gosh, they don't know the word computer. Are you kidding me? But a lot of times people who are very data driven and they don't have a pulse on the real world and they get isolated. A lot of times you take certain jobs, you take certain posts, you become educated in a certain way, you live in a certain way that you're tucked away from reality, and you don't have a pulse on the community outside of what social media gives you or what the news gives you. You'll be skewed. We're at the point now where a lot of us don't even have our reality is just what somebody else tells us it should be. And these are scary things. What is the moral of all of this? And what am I trying to get us to see? I want us to see, number one, how much we're being influenced to be pessimistic about certain things that we could do something about. People reject this statement, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us in the 60s that the Black man and woman must get up and must stop begging the white man to do for him what he could do for himself. You could take that today and take the race out of it. Obviously, he was talking to his people and trying to get his people to do for self and get up and do for self and take charge of their post, obviously. But if you take race out of that today, we have to stop being dependents. We have to realize that there's a lot that we can do for ourselves. Yes, we have to change the system. Yes, we have systems that are hurting people, killing people. Systemic racism is real. But how much can we do within our community? How much can we contribute to making a difference and making a change? I just told you that people look at data and statistics. What are you doing to contribute to the algorithm that may change next year's Pew Research study? What are you doing? How are you contributing at your child's school to give a different perspective? When you show up with your unique and individual self, your life experiences, you are giving a different perspective to a situation. I love the fact that when I sit down at the table, I give a whole different perspective. I am concerned about moral and ethical standards. I'm concerned about customer service and how people treat one another. So I make it a point to make it one of the principles in my life that I handle people a certain way, that I give a certain image. I'm careful about what I say about other people. I'm careful about giving people a safe space to express themselves because I want to make a difference. And if I can make a difference one person at a time, then I'm doing my part. The question is, what are we doing? Are we walking around caught up in our whatever dogma we believe in and downing the other person? Are we mad at somebody else because they believe differently from us? Are we angry at somebody else because they look differently or they have a different experience? Excuse me. What are we doing? See, doing for self. Yes, this platform is about entrepreneurship. It's about doing for self. It's about raising our economic standards. It's about creating a moral and ethical space and circle and a way of doing business so that people will want to do business with us. I tell people all the time, in this world that we live in, where everybody's so caught up on how to get over on somebody, scamming somebody, we're lying, we're stealing, we're doing all kind of crazy stuff. I try to pride myself with me and my circle of people that I work with on being that fresh glass of water, that refreshment. Because when we come to the table, we are striving to be moral, to be ethical, to be on a different level, to be open-minded, to be somebody that handles people in a certain way. That's what you get when you hire these conscious entrepreneurs that I'm talking to you about. You bring me into your organization, you're going to bring somebody in that respects your community, respects your organization, respects you, that tries its best to be as fair and just as possible. I'm going to try to be as smart as I can be. I'm going to try to make sure that every person that interacts with me has a certain experience. And that's how I contribute to what I could be pessimistic about. And I'm not saying this, I'm not trying to be pious, but I'm asking, how are we doing for self? How do we contribute? What are we doing to make that change? And I'm not talking about weaponizing your belief system where you go in and you beat somebody over the head. You shouldn't be doing this. But what kind of an example are you and I? I hear people talking about children and the children are this and something's wrong with them and the youth this and that. But what kind of example have we been? What kind of example have we been? Are we stuck in relationships that we can't get out of because we're staying for the children and teaching them that they should compromise their happiness, their lives? Or are we teaching them that they should just be rugged individuals and be extremely selfish? Is that what we're teaching them? Are we teaching them that the community doesn't matter? Ooh, that's a big one, right? Because a lot of us We say out of our mouth, out of one side of our mouth, that we for the community, but we're teaching our children to be rugged individuals. And so our children grew up and they're very selfish. They don't share. They don't care about other people. They don't volunteer anything. Nothing really matters to them outside of what it is that they want. Where did that come from? When we're sitting down, many times when I sit with entrepreneurs and I say, well, what's your short-term plan for your business? What's your 5-year plan for your business? Most of the time, they don't have one because they're really just hustling. They don't really believe that they're going to be here tomorrow, so they're hustling for today. Hustling to pay the rent, hustling to pay the bills, hustling to make payroll. No, but where's your strategic plan? What's your new product rollout? What's your new service rollout? Where are you going from here? How do you plan on developing your employees? And even though they're entrepreneurs, they're still rugged individuals. They got people working for them, and they really just see those people as extensions of themselves. And they're not investing in the people. They're not excited about the people. They don't even like the people that work for them. So it's all about how much money can I get? How much money can me and my wife or me and my husband garner up for our family? Is me, myself, and I. A lot of that comes from our pessimism about the future, and something that we've bought into because we're watching these news cycles and these news channels, and it's just gloom and doom and gloom and doom. And then we don't control our vibration because we don't control our thoughts. Every commercial, every show is really just stirring the pot of our lower chakras. And so all we're trying to do is just satisfy those lower chakras, have sex and eat. That's all we're thinking about. We're not thinking about elevating and rising into different levels of thought. We're not thinking about how if we make a difference in the community, we can change the world. We're not thinking about activating our third eye or increasing our heart chakra, our capacity to love. How much more can you love? When is the last time you thought about how much more you can love? I think about it all the time. All the time. Sometimes it impacts me because I'm always thinking about how much more can I show love for my community? How much more can I show love for those that I'm grateful for? How much more can I show love? How can I create that space of love for them? So we're not activating our heart chakra. And guess what? Your heart has intelligence. It ain't your brain that runs your body. It's your heart. It's your heart that tells the rest of the body what to do. Look it up. It's not the brain. It's the heart. But we forget about the heart chakra. We forget about the throat chakra. So we don't have a voice. We don't use our voice. We don't speak up. We forget about all these other senses because we're addicted to these lower chakras, which are necessary and good. But we're always satisfying because those lower chakras create certain sensations in our bodies that we're familiar with. We're familiar with the urge to want to eat. So what do? We overeat. We struggle with our discipline because that chakra that controls or that vibrates, that makes us think that we're having hunger pains, is always activated. Many of us are oversexed. We live in a hypersexual world. And the sexual subculture in our Black community really needs to be addressed. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about how a lot of our choice of dress is to let me just dress hypersexually. Let me make sure somebody sees me from a sexual standpoint. I could go deep into that. We are so desensitized sexually that we don't say nothing when underage girls are missing and we know they've been sex trafficked. We don't say anything about these these wild sexcapades that many Black people go on and how we're so hyper driven on sex. We don't talk about it because we're desensitized. That's a whole nother show. I think we talked about that a little bit before, but there's a sexual subculture in our community that is destroying our community. But we don't talk about it. We do not talk about it because the reason why we don't talk about it is because not only are we addicted to that low vibration, or that, I won't even call it a low vibration. We're just addicted to that vibration. It's a dominant vibration. Not only are we addicted to it, but we've tied, or the powers that be have tied economics to it. And so because economics is tied to it, we kind of forget our morals. We let our morals circle the drain because if you could get the bag, if you could pay your rent, if you can allow yourself to navigate in a world that is dominated by finances, then we tend to not frown on what people are oftentimes doing for the bag. So what are we thinking about our future? Are you planning for your future? In your business, do you have a strategic plan? First thing I do when people bring me into their business, I say, what is the future? What's the strategic plan for the future? What's the plan for the summer? What's the plan for the rest of the year? What's the plan for next year? What are you rolling out? What are you doing differently? Because most of us are just caught up on, let me just hustle to pay the bills. And I don't know if these people are going to have a job or not. I don't know if the business is going to be here. I'm just trying to make it. That means that a lot of us have given up on our future. We're not planning for the future. We're not thinking about the future because we can't see past today. We can't see past satisfying our dominant urges, which is caught up in the economy, in economics. We can't see past that. So we're not planning for the future, and we are letting somebody else determine what our future is going to look like. This is why it's so easy to unperson our heroes. This is why I've been in the fight of my life the last 4 years trying to preserve a piece of property that is critical to underserved communities. This is why I've been in the fight of my life trying to explain to people, listen, if we continue to allow this mass regentrification in our communities without writing down our history, we're really just unpersoning ourselves and allowing somebody else to reperson us. That's another subject. So anyway, thank you all for joining today. I suggest you go back and look at this because I realized it was a very deep conversation. I was getting a lot of downloads. I was a little bit discombobulated at the beginning of the conversation, but I want us to really think about what our view of the future is and how that impacts how we live today. And I'm going to say it like this. If you're pessimistic about the future, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, it is going to impact how you live today and how you plan. It's going to impact your micro decisions that ultimately will impact your life. It's going to impact you. I'll say it in a different way. if subconsciously you're constantly feeding on gloom and doom. I know we love the end of the world stories. We love, God is going to come back with blood on the sword. We love all of that. But is the whole, I'm going to leave y'all with this food for thought. I ask this question to my religious family and friends often. When God says he's going to raise the bottom rail to the top, what does that really mean? The top of what? And this is a skill set that I believe we should be practicing right now as everything is falling and going to pieces around us. We need to be learning how to manifest in the face of controversy. I believe wholeheartedly that this is what God is teaching me and what he's been teaching me in the last 4 years. It's real easy to manifest in a space of peace. But when you have controversy, when you have drama, when you have struggle, and you have to figure out, how do I make something happen out of that? How do I make something happen despite that? Despite being threatened, despite feeling unsafe, despite all of being attacked, how do I still make something happen? This, I believe, we have to learn how to do. We can't get so caught up in the fall of the world, the fall of America, the book of Revelations, and the end of the world that we forget that somebody got to be here to rebuild these wasted cities. If the bottom rail is getting raised to the top, then what skill sets do the bottom rail people need so that when we're raised to the top, we can represent in a manner that we talked about at the beginning of the show? What are we practicing today? You heard me talking about how I'm really learning to manifest in the face of controversy. I'm really striving to be an example, to be different, to live by a certain moral standard and treat people a certain way, regardless of who they are. Learning to speak up, learning to do all of these different things that I believe I'm going to have to do if I'm blessed to be one of the bottom rail that is raised to the top and given the responsibility in the face of controversy. So if it's famine, if it's war, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be helping people? Who's going to be able to make it? Are we even in shape enough that if something happens to the road, can we get up the street? Maybe we got to ride our bicycle. Maybe we got to run. Maybe we got to jog. How are we preparing ourselves today for the future? Most of us are so caught up and we just wait and we just go, okay, well, Jesus is coming back. So when Jesus come back, he going to make everything all right. What you going to be doing in the meantime? Because God's time is not our time. It might take what feels to us like a long time. What are we going to be doing? What are we going to be doing? How are we going to be eating? Are we just worried about whether or not our families can eat? If we the top rail, if we now the leadership, if we now in charge in these wasted cities, how are the people going to eat? How are we going to handle crime? How are we going to do all of these things? Who's going to be in charge? Or do you think you're going to be somewhere in a bunker just eating on your survival kit by yourself? You're going to have to come out at some point. And when you come out, what does that mean? Or maybe you're not going to come out. Maybe you're just going to stay in there until you die. I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is that some of us believe that we have a certain level of responsibility to be examples, to demonstrate a way of life, to live in a civilized manner that is a level of hope for other people looking at us. We talk about resurrection. Many of us done forgot all about that we're supposed to be in the resurrection business as spiritual people and people of certain religions on this planet. We're supposed to be in the resurrection business. So our very presence should resurrect somebody. What does that mean? Our presence should bring hope. Our mannerisms should bring comfort. Our words should bring safety. We should be changing the molecular structure of every environment that we go into just from being there because of how we vibrate. That's going to resurrect people. What is resurrect? It's going to turn them towards the right way of being things. That's my alarm telling me to shut up. So I'm going to go. So tomorrow morning on Coffee Talks, go back and listen to this one. Please make sure you like and subscribe and share. Thank you for those of you in the chat who've been sharing. I'm sorry I didn't get to y'all today. Give a love offering. Like I tell y'all every week, I give this information for free. I give y'all free game. All I ask is that you give a love offering. So just go to Cash App, Sajdah Enterprises, give a love offering, or hit that super chat button. Oftentimes these topics, these subjects are not shared by the algorithms. So it's up to us to share them. We got to make this go viral the old-fashioned way. I'll give you an example. I did a series, was it last week, on making big decisions and on the power of decision making and all of that. And I got the email from YouTube saying that we violated community guidelines. All we did was talk about making big decisions and the importance of making big decisions. So the algorithm is not necessarily friendly towards us giving away free game or helping you to change your life. Okay. So here on this channel, we in the resurrection business. And oftentimes the algorithm is not friendly or doesn't have an affinity towards those of us in the resurrection business. So it's not going to share and like our stuff. So tell as many people as you can to come out, like, and share, to check out past episodes and give a love offering. Let me see. I'll take a couple minutes here and give y'all a shout out. Sister Monica says, faith with works over fear, qualifying ourselves for positions awaiting. Thumbs up to Equator 7. Sister Betty says, awesome teaching. Thank you, Sister Betty. Brother Jamil said, we refuse to be repersoned. That's right, Brother Jamil. Walaikum salam, sir. Timestamp Army. Mr. Neely Fuller speaks on how sex is the second most powerful thing on the planet after WS. But yes, that's why the music changed after the 70s. They start putting certain tones in to activate those lower chakras that make us go to sex and hunger. That's how they're able to control us. That's how they make us buy certain products and services. There's a tone. It's just like when you watch a horror film, there's a tone that they put in the horror film that makes you feel scared the entire time. It's why when you're watching a mystery, they change up the music because they want to activate that emotion in you. Well, for many of us, we are constantly vibrationally impacted by tones and music and words and programming that all we think about are the sensations given to us by our lower chakras. Like we think we always hungry and we think we always got to have sex. And for those that aren't necessarily thinking that they're going to go out and have sex, they're driven by that sexual urge. And when you become overdriven by that, I think Sister Ava had a lecture about it where she talked about now you're animalistic. It's all about, you look at everything from a standpoint of sex. What it'd be like to be with that person. What it'd be like to be here. Everything is that, and then you get messed up. Okay. So let's see who else we got. I see Sister Betty. Thank you, Brother T. Darnell. Thank you so much for referring people. Thank you. T. Darrell Muhammad. Thank you. He said deep conversation. And I see Nubia Latifa here. She says, Assalamu alaikum. Happy Friday. All right. Tomorrow on Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks, we're going to talk about safety. And I told you all that it stems from a conversation that I had with a friend of mine from Africa who said, you all in America as Black people are dealing in a space where you're always feeling unsafe. You're not safe emotionally. You're not safe financially. You're not safe spiritually. You're not safe physically. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I said, man, I gotta bring this so we can talk about it. And then the last thing he said to me, he said, because you all always feel unsafe, you don't provide safety for anybody. And that was like a low blow to me. He said, y'all don't provide safety for your children. Y'all don't provide emotional safety for each other, physical safety. And I tried to push back a little bit, but I thought it was interesting that was his perspective. Ooh, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your name. Alicia? Alish El Muhammad. Welcome and thank you. Walaikum salam, sir. Okay, family, we'll see you tomorrow, 6 a.m. Central Time for the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talk. And remember, we talk about life, love, and business. We give away free game on how to navigate the world of business. And business is not just about the technical components, accounting, marketing, legal. No. We're talking about what we need to be up here in order to get where we need to go so that we can be that bottom rail that gets raised to the top and we can manifest in the space and in spite of controversy. All right, family, peace and blessings. Love you all. Please continue to support the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. Your girl is striving to manifest in the face of controversy. Give a love offering, Sajdah Enterprises, and I'll see you all, inshallah, tomorrow. Happy Friday.